Hello, welcome to St. Leo's. I'm Rick Samyn. I'm the pastoral assistant for social justice here, and also I'm the beekeeper. Here at St. Leo's we have a program called the Honey Project, and it's to support creation and to kind of connect people with nature through honeybees. We have about 40 to 50 hives, and to support those bees we create products out of materials we get from the hive. Today I'm going to show you how we make our soap, and it's a beeswax based soap, and it starts actually with our own beeswax from our own honeybees. So we process this and we clean it up to where it looks like this. This is the amount we're going to use today to make one large bar of lavender soap. So just a little bit to talk about what we have here, what you need to make soap, because you could do this at home. Basically we have some kitchen products, the kitchen materials that you need, some bowls. This is a hot process soap, so we're using lye, sodium hydroxide. So when you do use sodium hydroxide, you have to make sure that what you're pouring your materials in are porcelain, stainless steel, or plastic. So just the important thing to know. It doesn't take a whole lot of money to start this process. 20 bucks or for a grill. This is a very important tool. It's an infrared tool to measure temperature. One of the things in making hot process soaps, you have to be exact on your temperatures, and this is a great thing, and you don't have to stick it in the oils. You can just point and shoot. Also, a good scale is important because you have to be accurate on your measurements when you are putting product together. This is a mold for the soap bar. Once this is poured, and later on in this process we actually chop these up into making small bars of soap, with eventually the product looking like this. So we start with basically our oils and our essential oils and our beeswax, and we end up with a nice bar of soap. The first thing we're going to do to begin this soap making process is we have to prep our mold. And this is a real nice mold. It costs about $35. I got it from Brambleberry Soap Making out in Bellevue. You get just about everything you need from them. It's a good, reputable company. So first we have to do is we have to just kind of grease the inside of the mold. I just use Crisco. It doesn't take much. Just rub it in there like you would a pie pan. The next thing we need to do is we need to line this mold with some parchment paper. You don't really have to do this, but it really makes it a lot easier to get the soap block out of the mold. I set it down first flat like that. Usually I get a little piece of wood just to hold it. And I want to identify the corners of the mold. And it's easy to do it. I just kind of press my finger in there and it kind of has a little imprint to it, because we have to cut this. So once those impressions are made, I can put the mold aside. I think we're going to have to redo this because this light is so bright, I'm not seeing my impressions. Just repeat the process, but this time I'm going to make my impressions and a little mark. Just so you know where the corners of your mold are at, because that's where you're going to make some cuts. That's pretty good. Now you just need to have a straight edge. I just have a piece of bee frame from the beehives, and I can use it. I just line it up on the two dots, and what we want to do is make a cut. Well, I'll show you. make a cut so we can identify the corners of the mold. I do the other side. I try to be exact because it does matter a bit once you try to fit this into the mold. Now I have to go the other way so I can kind of cut those corners out that I'm not in need of. And this step gets discarded. And then move over here and do the same thing for the other side. It's great because I get a chance to use my pocket knife, and I love my pocket knife. So there's our liner for the mold. Bring our mold back. Again, you got it greased a little bit. I just put it right back where it originally was. I take my fingers and I just kind of slide that paper down there. It usually goes in pretty good. You want to try to square it off fairly well, otherwise you'll have rounded edges on your bars of soap, and you really don't want to have that, because later on in this process you'll be beveling the soaps with a little tool to make it look really nice and fancy. So now that mold is ready to go. So we just set that aside, and now it's time to measure out the oils for the soap. So now we're going to start mixing our oils for the soap. It's kind of important when you do a soap recipe, just write your recipe down. Don't try to do it by memory, because if you do make a mistake, it'll probably ruin your soap. Also, there's a lot of varying ways you can make soaps. We do lavender, peppermint, different oils as bases, different oils as essentials. Again, Brambleberry Soap Making Company does have a lot of helpful tips for making your own recipes. So again, today we're going to do a lavender soap, and it's going to be a goat milk base. Just plain old goat milk from the store. So I normally make either a goat milk base or a water base. And you could switch it up, the recipe remains the same, but the process is a little different. So first of all, I have to run off and get some ice cubes. I'll be right back. All right, I've got my ice, and I've got all the products in my bowls lined up to begin the process. We're going to start first by assembling the base oils. Checking my recipe, my first base oil is going to be olive oil pomace. I have a bigger bottle that actually has a label on it you can read. I believe it's first pressing of the oils. So we're going to measure it off. So we have our great scale here. Also too, one of the things you just got to remember is make sure your scale is zeroed, so you're not measuring the bowl, you're just measuring the product in the bowl. So we want 19 ounces of olive oil. That's just about 16, 17, 18, 18 and 3/4, 18 and 7/8, 19. This is a great scale. It's very exact, and that's what you need. So now we're just going to pour that right into our crock pot. Again, it's a little inexpensive thing. Great for making soaps. Pour that in. And like I was saying, it's exact, so I make sure I get just about every drop out. Make sure it's nice and clean. Maybe this is a bit over the top, but I also put it back on the scale. The scale should read 0, so you know you got all your product in there. The next oil, which is actually our beeswax, but it's considered an oil in soap making. This is 1.5 ounces. It's pre-measured. Normally it comes in a block. This is a block of our own beeswax that we cleaned and processed. You can also buy this, but this is from our own hives. And we're going to mix that as part of the base oil. We just get it all in there. Put the lid on. And go back to my recipe and make sure I've got everything I need. So I got my olive oil, got my beeswax. The other base oil I use is palm oil. Now palm oil, people have some issues with it as far as the justice, environmental issues regarding the production of palm oil. I make sure this is sustainably sourced. I do talk to the vendors that I get products from if I have a question about it. If I have a question about it, I ask them to make sure that I'm doing soap making in a responsible manner. Okay, now we have to measure our palm oil. 4.5 ounces. I can use the bowl I had before. I don't have to necessarily have a clean bowl. It's zeroed out. 4.5 ounces. Palm oil is kind of a thick oil. That's why it's in kind of a flake form. That's 4.5 ounces right there. Set that aside. This also goes into the mix with our other base oils. Should just about do it. I'm zeroed out again, so I got all the product I need in there. Back to my recipe, always got to double check. So with this lavender soap, we have our base oils of olive oil, pomace, beeswax, and palm oil. So we're done with the base oils right now. So they have to just kind of cook up and liquefy. So normally with my base oils, as well as with when we get to the sodium hydroxide mix, I try to keep the temperature between 125 and 128 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if the base oils get hotter than that, it's not a problem. Just let it cool down. And that's what's great about having this thermometer. With the base oils, you can use a wooden spoon. It's no big deal. We don't have sodium hydroxide in here right now. It's just oils. Just mixing it up. And I usually just let it set for a while. It really has to just warm up. Everything has to melt. So now we're going to measure out our essential oils and also our super fatting oil. The super fatting oil is an oil that's added to the mix after saponification, after the soap has actually made its chemical changes. The super fatting oil is the oil that helps the soap feel good on your skin. Also, since we're using goat milk, that also has a great feeling on the skin, and that's why I do make goat milk soap. So let's measure that stuff out. Again, we want to zero out our scale. So the super fatting for this recipe is almond oil. I can get that at Brambleberry, or I can get it at your grocery store. Food grade almond oil is just fine. It doesn't take much. So we only want 1 1/4 ounces of super fatting oil. There we go, 1 1/4 ounces. Set that aside. So the essential oil for this soap is going to be lavender. Again, different recipes. We have peppermint, patchouli. There's just a ton of different recipes you could create. This one's going to be lavender. Zero out our scale. Check our recipe. So I want 1 1/2 ounces of lavender. Sometimes pouring it from the bottle makes a mess and you get essential oil all over the place. So I usually have another container I can put the lavender in, or any other essential oil. So that's a half. One 1/4. One 3/8. We're getting close. Sometimes I cheat and I touch the scale, but nope. Gotta be close to 1 1/2. Not quite. One 1/2. All right, we're done with that. Set this aside. Now the only other product that needs to be measured out for this process to continue is the sodium hydroxide. This I measure out last. One of the things sodium hydroxide loves to do, it loves to suck moisture out of the atmosphere. So once it starts picking up water, it starts to cook off. It starts to actually heat up. So that's why I always wait to the last step before mixing to do that. Now this is something that I bought from Brambleberry Soap Making, but you don't necessarily have to buy it from them. You can buy it at the hardware store. It usually comes as drain cleaner. But the only caution is please read the ingredients on the product before you purchase it, because it has to be 100% lye. There are some drain cleaning items out there that it's a mix of chemicals, and you do not want to mix these chemicals up. So it's got to be 100% sodium hydroxide lye. So now we're going to mix the sodium hydroxide base before mixing. So like I said before, you could either have a base that's made out of water. We're gonna do goat milk. So I have the ice here. Okay, now our base oils are plenty hot. It's time to introduce the lye to the water base, or in this case, it's gonna be goat milk. So the goat milk's sitting here in its ice. Again, I don't want the goat milk to get too hot because I don't want it to curdle too much. Sodium hydroxide is some nasty stuff. If you're more comfortable, put on goggles and a respirator and gloves. I've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm comfortable with it, but I'm still very careful with it. Also, when you do pour it into the product, it lets off vapors. Step away from the vapors. Do not breathe this in. Not only the vapors, but also the dust from these containers. Again, zero my scale. Check the recipe. 3 1/8 ounces of lye. That's 3 1/8 ounces. Again, make sure these things are covered right away. You don't want to do this ahead of time because it's going to collect the moisture from the atmosphere and start to cook off. So we're going to pour the lye into the goat milk. I'm using a stainless steel spoon. Don't use wood. Don't use anything that's not stainless steel. And this does get warm. It's going to warm up, but I'm going to regulate the temperature a little bit because it's in the ice as well. It's normal for the goat milk to begin to yellow a little bit. So if you see a yellowing, that's totally normal. Slowly introduce the lye into the water or the goat milk. Constantly stir it so you have the heat is evenly distributed into the goat milk. Now it was at refrigerator temperature. I'm going to check the temperature now. It's at 101 degrees. I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but the goat milk is starting to yellow a little bit. And that's okay, and it's getting more like a bit of a curdle. That, again, that's natural, that's okay, but it's not getting real clumpy because we're regulating the temperature with the ice. It's 137 degrees. Again, when we introduce the lye to the oil base, we're talking about 125 to 128 degrees Fahrenheit. And that may vary depending on your recipe and your oil bases, because oils will solidify at different temperatures. The trick is not to have it too hot, but not to have your oil thicken up, and to have both solutions at the same temperature within a degree. We're back down to 110 degrees. I'm now going to shift it over to the burner. Just set the ice aside just in case you overheat it. You can put it back on the ice. Okay, so right now we've got the lye just sitting here. The burner's not on. We're not ready to warm it up yet. So now it's time to transfer the hot oil base to our mixing bowl. It's at 163 degrees Fahrenheit right now, so we need to let it cool down to about 120. It'll do so as we transfer it and stir it. Okay, we're checking the temperatures again. You're going to be back and forth checking temperatures and stirring to get that temperatures equal again.
between 125 and 128 degrees Fahrenheit. When they're equal within that range, it's time to mix. 160 degrees with the oil. And if you want to just let it cool down quicker, stirring it seems to help. Kind of gives it a little more surface area to release the heat. Now our lye mixture is 98 degrees, so we're going to have to warm that up a little bit. I'm going to turn the burner on. You don't want to turn it on too high, and you want to continually stir it because you don't want to burn this mixture. So now it's a bit of a waiting game back and forth. The smoke you're seeing is just a little bit of, I think, oil that's on the burner. It's at 104 degrees. The oil's at 152 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, both of our solutions are about the same temperature, so we're getting ready to mix. Always pour the lye into the oil, not the other way around. Stir immediately. You want to make a good mix. Get that lye solution in good relationship with the oils. Now, because we put the stearic acid in it, it's going to go to trace pretty quickly. And trace is when you add the super fatting, the almond oil, as well as your essential oil. So we're going to check for trace right now. And trace is basically using your spoon to trace a line on the surface of the liquid. I don't know if you can see this, but it's almost getting to trace where if I dribble, I start to see kind of a shadow or a ghost of where the dribble was. I'm gonna stir it a little bit more, but you can see it's starting to thicken up, so we're pretty much there. Okay, I can start seeing it fairly well. So now we're going to start mixing the super fatting oil with the solution here. So this is saponified now. This is now considered soap. Putting our oil in. And we're going to put our lavender in there. It's important to make sure it's stirred well, because if you don't, you might get some hot spots with that essential oil where it's kind of all essential oil and it's a little too strong. Okay, we're ready to pour the soap mixture into our mold that we are ready to go with. There it goes. Looks like we have just enough for this mold. If I have extra, sometimes I just pour it in another container. So there it is. So right now we have to
make sure it cools off slowly. I made this little styrofoam cover. You can use cardboard as well. Put it on your soap bar, and you're pretty much it. You let this cool off. In 1 day, 24 hours, you take this cover off. Then you wait about 5 days to pull the bar of soap out of the mold. Okay, so it's been a week since we poured the soap into the mold. So right now we're going to go ahead and see if we can pop it out of the mold and cut our soap blocks for curing. It comes out usually pretty easy because of the parchment and a little bit of Crisco that I put on the form itself. Plus the soap does shrink a little bit from away from the paper. Just about there. Taking apart the form, I just flip the wood away like that. It just kind of collapses. Nice and easy. Then I flip like that. I put this paper back. We're going to have to kind of knock the bottom piece off, so I don't want to scar my soap because it's still pretty soft. There we go. All right, so let's see what this looks like. You see the bit of a discoloration or a difference in the colors? It's just because some of this soap is a little more cured than the rest, but it looks really nice. So there's our block of soap. Now it's time to just cut it. It's a nice little tool here, a little jig to set it in there. Slide it in. Now this style has got two different, I guess you could call them settings. Here's the cut mark, so you can make either thicker bars or a little bit thinner bars. The thinner bar is pretty much the standard bar, and that's the one we use here at La Honey. So I just slip it in like that. Little cutting blade, and just gently wiggle it down. The bar is still pretty soft. And there's your soap, and you can see the different colors. So the outside is starting to cure and the inside is still pretty soft, but it's ready to cut. We'll just leave it like that. So just cut your blocks. In the office, I have a little stand I can put these in. It's just important that your soap blocks have got some airspace in between, because they do need to cure completely before you use them. I normally allow the whole cure time to be 8 weeks. So from the time of pouring it to the time that you're ready to package it, I give my soap 8 weeks. Now this is a goat milk based soap, so it's going to be a little bit darker. If I use the water base,
the soaps would be a little lighter. It's a little sampler I can give away to somebody who's a little too thin. So right now you have the raw block of soap. Now once this is cured, again it has to take about 8 weeks. It's kind of nice to give a little bit of shape to the edges. It just makes a nice handsome bar of soap. So once it's cured, we have this little tool that has a blade in it. You basically just set your soap there and run it across the blade, and you do that on all the corners, and it gives you that nice look of the bar. The only trick to this is soap is kind of sticky and your blade clogs up. I made this little special tool, so every once in a while you just kind of clean the blade away so it shaves your soap real well. Then after that, you're done with a real nice bar of soap, and we have our nice little tag on it. If you do give soaps to folks, or if you do sell them for whatever project you have, make sure you have all the ingredients on your label so people have any allergy issues, they know what they're buying, and also your contact information. So that pretty much finishes our soap making project here at Lahoney. We hope to do some more of these little YouTubes on other products, and maybe someday get out to the beehive and actually see where wax is made. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And this is Rick from St. Leo's, the Lahoney Project.